So welcome back to the Sign of Good Health podcast. Today I'm with Erin Cooney, the owner of Rince Nua in Maple Grove. So Erin, do you want to tell us a little bit about the kind of history and background of Irish dance culture?
Yeah, sure. Well, Irish dance goes, really way back for the Irish culture. Basically, the Irish always had a real big pride in their heritage, music and dance and poetry and things like that. And it was something that parents would pass down to their children and something you would teach, like the Irish language, the Irish dance, and everything like that. So basically, with the Irish culture, there was a time in Ireland where there were these laws that were placed in Ireland, and they were called the penal laws, and basically a lot of the Irish culture was not allowed. You weren't allowed to kind of pass that on based on kind of governmental laws. So parents really needed to figure out a way, this is their joy and something that they really love. They want to be able to pass on the dancing tradition. So a big part of the Irish culture is, how can we pass this on to our children despite the regulations that were in place during some of their history. And it was also, dance is also a piece of just coming together as a community and enjoying something together in celebration. So basically, part of the Irish history and passing on Irish dance, there's kind of these tales of how they were able to pass on the traditions of Irish dance. And one of them was that because they couldn't get up and dance and kind of and teach dance, basically they would use like the thumb as the floor and two figures representing the feet for the footwork, and kind of like teach their child how to dance basically with their fingers, and then say, well, this is your right foot, this is your left foot, and that's how you dance. So that was one way that they were able to pass it down through the years. But basically it's just a very it's a proud piece of the Irish culture and something that in hard times they enjoy doing and in times they wanted to celebrate. So it's a pretty neat cultural piece. Yeah.
So you want to give us some of your dance history and then like how you formed the studio?
Yeah, sure. So for my dance history, I've just always enjoyed dancing. So when I was young, my mom put me in ballet and tap classes. And at some point, I kind of knew about Irish dance only from my mom, who had traveled to Ireland and saw Irish dancers in Ireland. And then we went to the Milwaukee Irish Fest. And that was my first kind of experience seeing Irish dancers at that time. And that was pre-Riverdance days. So when Riverdance came out, I was like, what is this? This is insane. This is an Irish dance show? Because it was, to me, the Irish dance was really like a very cultural dance form. It was not something you would typically see at a stage show. So I was, I believe, 15 when Riverdance came out, and I had already been Irish dancing, and I was just trying to figure out, okay, how does this work? It's like a cultural dance form, but now everyone loves it as like a stage show. And so basically it became very popular, and then people kind of understand and kind of had an understanding of what I did as an Irish dancer, and I only had a very foundational knowledge of it, just the basics, but then I started getting asked to perform for places because people heard that I Irish danced, and then I got asked to teach for, clubs, dance clubs and schools and dance studios because it was something that people wanted to learn at the time. They wanted to learn how to river dance. So that's kind of how I got into teaching and performing myself. Yeah.
So how's the pandemic impacted the studio?
Really, we were able to move all of our classes online. So I think the biggest impact was a different delivery of what we were doing, and then providing more resources for the dancers to dance at home. So, talking about what are some different flooring options they can use at home, what kind of space they need to use at home. These are the videos to learn the dances. These are the videos to practice the dances so you understand the timing. These are our live classes so we can watch them dance and give them feedback. These are some notes that you can use at home. So we just were constantly trying to figure out ways to support them and give them feedback and help them to stay on track to continue to progress with their dancing in some way. And some of our dancers also ended up figuring out, programs and ways to improve their athleticism at home, doing online fitness programs so that they could keep their dancing up, because I think that was one of the biggest struggles, was just keeping their stamina up. They weren't dancing full out at home at any point. So, and then when they come back into the studio, we've been dancing with masks, which we've been giving them a lot of breaks in between dancing as well. So it's kind of been the biggest impact for us. So we did spend, I think, 5 months of the 12 months this year online, like completely online. And then the other thing is just kind of the class dynamic, because we have some students online now and some students in person that are used to being together, and so they just haven't seen each other as much as normal. So.
Yeah. So how does that work with, like, if the girls are learning online and then coming together, because you've got formations where they all have different parts, and just how do you put all that together?
Yeah, so we tried a couple different things. Some things worked, some things didn't. We would give them numbers and then a video of what the dance looked like, and kind of like say, this is your number for it, because some dances we've performed before, so it was easier to kind of plug it in and say, this is what we're doing, this is what it looks like, a demonstration of the video. And then some things we just taught them the steps and said, just know this super well, because when we do come together, it's going to be very quick to figure out how we're going to put this together. Right. And it was just kind of like a puzzle piece. Then when we finally were able to come together, we just had to make the formation stuff happen quickly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what kind of training have you found helpful for the girls to do, like to kind of supplement the dancing?
Yeah, I think Irish dance is really just kind of a good supplement for any type of activity that they're doing. And besides, I've noticed it works really well, for dancers who actually also want to do tennis or also want to do some of these other sports. It's not so great if they want to be a runner. It's just kind of the impact of their legs to be doing a lot of running and a lot of dancing, but really it works really well with so many other sports, and it helps them with other sports as well as the other sports helping their Irish dancing. And for those that choose Irish dance as their main thing, and they really don't have any other size sports, basically, what our dancers do is they have like an athletic training program to like increase their mobility and flexibility and their strength, and specific to Irish dance so that they can improve their Irish dancing. But Irish dance isn't one of these sports. People always kind of talk about it like baseball, like a pitcher in baseball. Like throwing more isn't going to always make you better. It will actually hurt you. so you have to like figure out, how much is too much and how much is not enough as far as dancing goes, and then supplement with other things. Like, you can be biking, you can be swimming, you can be doing all these other things, and it will help your dancing. You can't get into the point of like, all I have to do is dance to become a better dancer. So they have to kind of like really have a whole world view of like, I'm an athlete and part of it is dancing, and I can't overdo that,
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you want to talk a little bit about, so you teach like 3 to 18, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about like the skill development that kind of goes through those different ages?
Sure, yeah. When they come in at 3, we really want to introduce them to the music and just kind of get used to basic movements like hopping and jumping and skipping and galloping and walking on their toes. And then as far as hard shoe goes, really just like keeping the beat, whether it's clapping or with your feet, so really just foundational, enjoying the music and getting used to traveling across the floor, doing different types of movements. And then we kind of move into a stage too where they're getting more used to like doing all of those movements, but with like their posture up and their arms down, because when they're little, like you want to jump with your arms in the air and everything to make that happen. So then we're really transitioning to more like, what does the upper body look like, and keeping your head straight and standing tall when you're doing all these movements, because it feels very different for them. And then really it's kind of this foundational skill set of like what the leg is doing. So you're kind of like controlling the bigger movements of the leg, and then as they advance, it's like more detailed work. So then it's like all about, the ankle. and the toe, and then all of a sudden when you get to the highest level, it's these little movements like just dropping your heel and the right time of the music and getting a good sound, combined with something else really intricate. So it's kind of like the basics, the foundations, and then like these bigger skills, or the posture, and then the bigger skills with the legs, and then looking at the more intricate footwork. Yeah.
So it sounds like there's the gross motor movement stuff, and then fine. So for training, it's like there's posture stuff. There's like hip and leg control, like hamstring strength. I assume is big. Like what attributes?
Calf muscles, because we're always on our toes.
Right. Yeah. Are there injuries that are common? Types of injuries?
Yeah. So one of the biggest injuries that is out there in Irish dance is not something we actually have had any issues with. And basically, the Irish dance world has grown and evolved, and there's different organizations have different approach with Irish dance. And even though it all kind of goes back to the foundations, different organizations kind of one of the organizations has become super athletic, and it's all kind of about the big movements, traveling and big movement like athleticism. And other organizations have gone more like the artistic route, and I think of it kind of like pop music and classical, there's sort of foundation there, but then there's like a certain direction someone wants to go with their music. It's kind of the same way with Irish dance. So the traditions are all there, but then there's like the contemporary. And one of the things that has occurred is that, not the organization I'm part of, but they overcross their feet, and they're having lots of hip issues with dancers. And then the other thing that dancers, because if they're training too much, or they're training too hard, or they're training on a floor that's not appropriate for Irish dance, they can get a lot of shin splints, but also like small fractures, and foot fractures, I guess I would say, and then leg kind of issues as well. But mainly I've heard about the hip. Generally speaking, when I've seen injuries, it's usually if a dancer is coming down from a movement and they're not allowing their body to kind of absorb it. So if you want a really big leap with that straight leg, you have to remember that you have to land it. So if they're really trying to be athletic and big, they can try to keep that straightness the whole time and not really allow their body to kind of absorb landings, like with their ankles and with their knees and things like that. So that's what I found. So we talk a lot about making sure you do that. Even though your knees have to bend during that point, then you got to get straight in the air.
Yeah, and I think that you've talked in the past about there's certain types of moves you just don't have your girls do.
Yeah. So the organization that I'm a part of, safety is first, and they've seen all these other injuries with other organizations, and they're like, we're just not going to go there. There's no reason to be doing those movements on children if they're likely going to get injured. So the other one we don't do is toe stands. So it'd be like the ballet on point kind of stuff. And our organization has just said, we're just not doing them. They're not necessary. Yes, they're a cool skill, and it's probably fun to do that, but over the long term, if you're training those a lot, there's just so much injury with it that we wouldn't want to hinder their ability to dance for a lifetime.
Right.
So yeah, we don't do toe stands.
Yeah. So that's a good point you brought up too. Do you want to talk about the dance being kind of a lifelong sport?
Yeah, so that's why I love the organization that I'm a part of, because they have competitor dancers into adulthood, over 25 category, and a lot of these dancers, have been at the highest level of dance kind of their whole life, and they're able to successfully train and keep with the sport for that long, which is amazing to me. So I see a lot of sports where kids, have to quit early. I was a gymnast actually growing up, and by the time I was 17, I had so many injuries, I was ready to be done. And it was very, very sad to put so much time into something and then know you can't do it again, So, I mean, you can switch to being a coach or a teacher or something, but to actually do the sport still is so cool, I think. So, yeah, Irish dance, people are able to continue to do it as long as, they know how to take care of their body and they're not doing some of these, crazy training methods or crazy skills that are prone to injury. So, it's really neat in that way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about like the team culture that you have here?
Yeah, so we have things set up so that we kind of have like small cohorts of groups of dancers. So in general, if they stay enrolled, they're going to kind of stay with those same dancers throughout their lifetime here, So, they may start in a class when they're 3 or 4 or 7, and then kind of stay with those same dancers till they're at the highest level. And what's so cool about that is they kind of get this dynamic of just knowing how to work together really well. Like they just, there's certain people that will, put out ideas. They're not afraid to like say, I think that part of the dance needs to be fixed. And, everyone's just kind of like, yeah, we're working as a team here. So I think it's really neat at our highest level. Like they get a lot of input into how to improve their dance, what the choreography is, just encouraging each other to make it work as a team. So I just think it's kind of cool that even though it's an individual sport in a sense for the most part, that we're able to build that teamwork aspect in here. So I like that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about it being an individual sport, because like you wouldn't necessarily think that, but then it's like it is, everybody has to be performing at a certain level and then also working together to keep the formations and the timing and everything. So that's really interesting. Mm-hmm. So how does the choreography process work?
Yeah, so for our highest level class, they get a lot of input into what the choreography is. So basically, for the most part, I choose the steps. Like, so what's happening with their feet, basically, I teach them that work. And then once that is pretty solid, then we kind of figure out, okay, who's in this class, how many dancers do we have, how many people are performing, and how long do we want this dance to be. Sometimes we choreograph it without the music, and sometimes we add the music later. So sometimes we do it kind of around the music. But basically we talk about, okay, what are we going to include in this dance, what would be cool to be different, or, something that they want to add. And then it's just like putting a puzzle together. Like they work together, like, how about if we try this? And then that didn't work very well. It didn't look as cool as we thought it would look. Or people are running into each other. What if we modify it a little bit this? So it's really just a process of working together and creating something cool that everyone has input into,
Yeah, it's really cool if they get some ownership in it.
Mm-hmm. Now we do have our big opener and our big closer is kind of like our statement pieces that we always do every year.
Right.
And what I love about that is like whether you were an Irish dancer with us, 5 years ago or today, that same dance. So it's like that common language. I love that. So like no matter what, if you're an alumni of the school, you're like, oh, they're doing that number. I know that number. And it's kind of like, just cool that everyone has that solid baseline together.
Yeah, and it was cool, like we were filming today, just seeing how you kind of have the signature piece, but then you tied in having the younger ones as a part of that.
Yeah, we added the younger ones and they just have so much fun, they get so nervous. Yeah.
So you want to talk about like how the Irish dance competitions work, and you guys have had some really high level success with that?
Yeah, so the competitions, basically, there's like major competitions like regionals and nationals and worlds. There's also the nationals, there's like a nationals in the United States and there's a nationals in Ireland. So we've attended all of those events. You need to qualify to be competing at like the highest level, like the solo championship level for those events. And basically there's solo competitions and there's team competitions. Now with team competitions, there's a variety of different categories you can also do in team competitions. There's one called Ceilidh dancing, which is a structured traditional dance of a certain amount of people. We've competed those dances. There's one called figure choreography, which is 20 or less dancers, somewhere between 8 and 20 dancers, And basically, you just make a whole bunch of different formations on stage, and that's your own choreography. But yeah, they've had different categories. They had one that's called freestyle, where you can kind of do like a show number, like a river dance kind of show number, where you can choose your own music and costumes and do like a stage show. So we've done a variety of things there, and we've also done the solo dancing competition. So yeah, we've enjoyed traveling to Ireland and competing at some of those larger events, and our dancers have placed and medaled at some of those events, which has been amazing. And it was just a constant progress. First was going there, next was getting someone to medal, next was bringing a team, next was, getting higher level at the team, higher placement, getting more people to medal. So it was just kind of a process like that, trying to advance and do as best as we could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you have those team dances, like, what happens if a girl gets injured? Like, how do you adjust for that?
Yeah, you need to just have like a substitute kind of set up, that knows the dance. So basically, you have to kind of align it with age groups too. So whoever you're going to have fill in that spot if someone is injured has to align with the age group that you're registered for. So that can be tricky, yeah.
So you mentioned like having girls start at 4 or 7 or whatever, and then kind of grow up through the years. So what happens hypothetically if you had a girl that wanted to start at like age 12, and then there's the girls that started at 8 and are now 12? Like, how does that integration work?
Well, basically, they start in our beginner class, and if a dancer is a little bit older, they get through that beginner class a little bit quicker sometimes.
Sure.
If they're younger, they kind of stay in that class for a while. They still need like a stronger foundation sometimes to move forward. But then we have a variety of ages within our level 1 class. So, the youngest I think we've ever had in level 1 is maybe a 6-year-old, but generally 7 and up. And the oldest we've maybe had in our level 1 class was maybe like 14 or something like that. So there's kind of an age range within that level 1, and then they just kind of keep on moving up with those same people. So they're with the same people, but their age difference might kind of be different.
Sure.
Yeah, they're not always with their exact level peers.
Yeah. So with adults, I know there's usually like a level of ego with not wanting to look stupid, like when they're learning. Do you see that with the young kids?
It's a good question. I think everyone can have that at some time. Sometimes some steps come easier to people than others, and I still feel like everyone can kind of have that, even in our advanced level. Like if there's just a step that's like they're really struggling with, they can feel kind of like, scared or embarrassed to try it, even though like that's what we try to like with the peer group that keeps moving up, like that they're comfortable trying new things around those people, But I still think everyone can get that way at a time, like feel like, oh, I'm the one not getting it. So, and then just feeling like, why is this so hard for me, or getting frustrated, right? Because you kind of see everyone else catching on faster.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I know you've had a few different boys in your studio here and there. So like, do you want to just touch on that? Like, there are guys that can do Irish dance.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And some of the schools have really great boy programs. We don't specifically have a separate boys program. Our boys are within our girls program, but they move up just through the levels just like our girls do. Some schools, they don't have the boys do certain dances. Like the slip jig is kind of like a more graceful dance, and so they just don't teach that one to boys, so they're more selective about what they teach the boys. They may even, at some schools, they may change the choreography for the boys like all the way through the levels, whereas we would only change things competitively for the boys. If they're competing at a certain level, like a high level, we may change choreography for them, just so that they get a few more movements that, like more stamps and different movements that seem more masculine and feminine.
Right.
Just to kind of like give them that look on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, for example, with when somebody's going from like wrestling to jiu-jitsu, there's kind of a different, they're similar, but they're both ground fighting, but there's different kind of mentalities. So with dance, if somebody was moving from, like, example, to ballet to Irish, is there kind of a transition, growing pains kind of, does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, yeah. This is kind of something I wondered a few years back too, and then I had a friend who taught Irish dance in addition to other dance forms, and I was kind of asking her about that too. And, you know, she said she just kind of tells her dancers to kind of compartmentalize, okay, I'm doing Irish, you know, and then there's ballet. So you get kind of, if you bring in a dancer who's done ballet or jazz or, you know, even basketball or gymnastics, like, I can usually tell what they've done prior because their body moves in a certain way according to that sport or that dance form. So if they go to bend their leg and their leg is like out to the side, they were probably a ballerina. If they go to bend their leg and it's straight forward, they were probably in jazz, you know. The different ways that they want to jump and use their arms, they might have been a basketball. So like, it's just kind of, you have this group of people and then you're just trying to bring them together to say like, when you actually bend your leg for Irish, this is where the position needs to be. And when you jump up in the air, you need to have those arms down. And, you know, just kind of like helping them compartmentalize, okay, when I'm doing Irish, this is what a jump looks like. This is what a, you know, bending your leg looks like. Staying off your heels, just all the little things like that, yeah.
Yeah, but from when you were talking earlier, it sounds like there's not necessarily anything that's detrimental. It's just different stuff is going to complement different components of dance and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, go more into that. Is you talking about more like the mental component?
Well, it could be a lot of different stuff. Like,
okay.
you know, like something that's intense, like basketball, is going to help with your stamina and jumping.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ballet might make you more graceful for some of the movements. Like tennis, you know, you got the side-to-side movements a lot, and the rotational strength, and like because you have turns, something there's usually not aggressive turns, but still.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, I mean, when you do Irish, you're always on your toes. Those toes, the heels never really come down unless you're doing a stamp. So one of the things is just calf muscles, you know, and you know, just standing there on your toes and just trying to stand there takes a lot of balance, you know. So it's not just, you know, you have your arms down, so you can't use your arms, and then you're on your toes, which is kind of your center of gravity is a little bit different there too to try to balance. So I would say it definitely helps with balance. At the younger classes, we don't even have them do their arms down at first because they're falling all over the place. They put their hands on their hips to try to keep balance. And you know, a lot of like learning the steps slow for the younger ones and the beginners, it's super hard for them to learn it slow with their arms down because they just don't have the balance. So I definitely can see that the balance is kind of one of the main components.
Sure.
And you know, calf muscles and things like that. And posture.
Posture.
Yeah.
I think that's about what I had for questions. So if you want to just give your plug, if people want to check out your school.
Oh yeah. So it's Rince Nua Irish Dance. Rinca means dance in Irish. Nua means new in Irish. And yeah, when I opened the school, I really wanted to bring the more traditional Irish dance from Ireland to the school, and that's kind of why I named it how it is too, like a different type of new dance that's Irish, because everything that was already here looked very the same to me, like cookie cutter. So our website is rincanua.com, and yeah, we have free trial lessons if students want to come in and try a lesson. That's usually how they get started.
Yeah, so she's in Maple Grove. Check her out. So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.